Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into some really fascinating data that kind of flips a common narrative right on its head. We're going to explore the complex factors that influence reproductive decisions, and what we find? Well, it points not to politics, but to something much, much deeper, something called upstream stability. So, what kicked this whole thing off? It's a puzzle, really, one that's hidden in the data. You see, within Black communities in the U.S., abortion rates are not uniform at all. In fact, they vary dramatically. And that leads to the big question we're tackling today. Why? Okay, so let's get right into the data. On one end of the spectrum, you have foundational Black Americans, those with deep ancestral roots right here in the U.S., and they have the highest relative abortion rate. In the middle, you've got Caribbean immigrants. And then, all the way on the other side, recent African immigrants have the lowest rate, and it's by a pretty big margin. Now here's the kicker, the really crucial part. This pattern holds true even when you adjust for income. That's our first big clue that this isn't just about money. Something else is going on. To make sense of this, the source we're looking at gives us this really helpful metaphor, one we're going to keep coming back to. And that's the idea of upstream versus downstream. Think about a river for a second. It's totally natural to just look at what's happening at the end of it, the downstream outcomes, right? In our case, that's the abortion rates we just saw. But if you really want to understand why the river's flowing the way it is, you can't stay at the end. You've got to go upstream and look at the source. We're talking about the foundational factors, family structure, economics, community norms, the whole shebang. So that's what we're going to do. Let's head upstream. Okay, so this analysis points to 7 key upstream drivers that really seem to explain this whole pattern. Let's walk through them one by one and see how it all connects. First up, and you could argue this is the most powerful driver of them all, is family structure. The data shows that African immigrant communities have, by far, the strongest two-parent norm and the highest marriage rates at the time of birth. For foundational Black Americans, these norms are often weaker, and that's due to a lot of complex historical factors. But the takeaway here is actually pretty simple. A pregnancy that begins inside a stable, committed partnership is just far less likely to end in termination, and that's true no matter what community you're looking at. Next up is age. What we see is that first pregnancies for foundational Black Americans tend to happen earlier in life, think teens and early 20s. For African immigrants, though, it's often later, in their late 20s or even 30s. And listen, this isn't just about the number itself. It's about what that extra time brings with it. Usually more financial stability, more personal readiness, which completely changes the context of a pregnancy. And that brings us right to economic positioning. A lot of African immigrants arrive in the U.S. with a pretty strong economic foothold. Maybe they already have a degree or they came through a job sponsorship. This kind of stability lets them plan their lives and often delay having kids until they feel they're on solid financial ground. You can see how that creates a totally different situation for a pregnancy compared to facing one while you're also navigating, say, intergenerational poverty. Fourth is culture. And we're not just talking about beliefs people hold quietly. We're talking about active social pressure. In many African cultures, there's this powerful sense of family obligation when it comes to having children. It's a world away from the emphasis on individual choice that's so common in broader American culture, which of course also influences the FBA community. And that social expectation, it can be an incredibly powerful force in shaping decisions completely separate from a person's income. This connects directly to the power of community. The strength of your extended family safety net makes a huge difference. For African immigrants, those family ties are often incredibly strong, creating a real, tangible support system. In contrast, for a lot of foundational Black Americans, things like geographic mobility and historical disruptions have weakened those traditional nets. I mean, it's simple. When you know you have that support to fall back on, an unexpected pregnancy is way less likely to feel like a crisis. We see a really similar pattern with religious participation. And the key here isn't just about private belief. It's about active community involvement. For many immigrant groups, their church or mosque is a vital hub. It's where people get real material support. It's where relationships are strengthened. And it's where social norms are upheld. All of that works together to create an environment that's incredibly supportive of family and childbirth. And the final driver is how people interact with health services. The analysis finds that African immigrant communities are just more likely to engage early and preventative. What does that mean? It means prenatal care starts sooner, which gives you more time and more options. This proactive approach is a big contrast to a more crisis-driven engagement, where really tough decisions have to be made under immense pressure and with way less time to plan. Okay, so we've just walked through 7 key drivers, everything from family structure to healthcare, and when you put them all together, they point to one central, really powerful insight. This one quote from the source really says it all. Abortion rates reflect upstream stability, not downstream ideology. Let me say that again. Abortion rates reflect upstream stability, not downstream ideology. In other words, what we're seeing here isn't really about political beliefs or ideologies. It's a direct reflection of the underlying social and economic stability of a community. And this is what the source calls upstream stability. It's not just one thing, right? It's the whole package, the combination of all those drivers we just talked about. We're talking stronger family structures, delaying childbirth, a culture of real community support. And the analysis shows that groups that have this kind of stability, and this is key, regardless of their race, they consistently have lower abortion rates. So, once you really grasp this idea of upstream stability, it has the power to completely reframe the entire public conversation. It suggests we should probably shift our focus away from politics and more toward practicalities. Now, before we go any further, it is really important to be crystal clear about what this analysis is not saying. The source is adamant that these are not genetic traits. They are not essentialist racial traits. They aren't just caused by where clinics are located. And maybe most important of all, these patterns are not fixed or permanent. They're the result of structural and cultural conditions that absolutely can and do change over time. So why does all this reframing matter? Well, because it points to totally different kinds of solutions. If the goal is to lower abortion rates, this evidence suggests the most effective path isn't through the endless political fights over clinics. Instead, it's about strengthening those upstream foundations, supporting stable families, creating real economic opportunity, and rebuilding those vital community support systems. Which leaves us with one last question. And it brings us right back to our metaphor. If we truly want to change what's happening downstream, where should we be focusing our energy? On the end of the river or on the conditions at its source?